Hello, everyone, and happy Monday or Tuesday, depending on where in the world you're joining from. I am Michelle O'Connor, your business growth advisor, and thank you for coming on to our live this morning. Today, we're going to be talking about, we're continuing our conversation around helping you to manage, how do you balance your time and dealing with overwhelm within your practice. And over the past few weeks, we've touched on your marketing. How can you enhance that so you're not doing everything, but you're really leveraging your digital channels? We've talked about how you can also think about your financial stability of your practice, because sometimes not knowing or not being aware or not understanding your numbers, that sometimes can allow you to be making decisions out of anxiety or fear and not utilizing your numbers. And we aim to give you as much information as possible to make running your practice seamless and profitable. But just like I encourage you, I'm doing that for myself. I don't know everything, but I know what you need to know. And I have a very great responsibility of finding experts that can help you guide or can be your guide on that journey. And this morning is no different. You might have seen the topic and you're like, your mistress, business mistress, like what are they going to be talking about? So we have with us very qualified Dr. Lynyetta Willis, and she'll be joining us as we're going to be talking about, is your business your mistress? I'm also very intrigued by the topic, and I'm looking forward to what we're going to be talking about. So if you're joining, please go ahead, drop some information about yourself in the chat, your location, your practice. If you agree with something, drop the word mistress. Not a word that we really want to use, but drop the word mistress in the chat, and any questions or comments, go ahead. We want this to be very interactive. So we're bringing to the stage Dr. Lynyetta. Hi, thank you so much for joining us.
Hello, hello. It's so good to be here. This is exciting.
Bright and early on a Monday morning, right?
Yes.
So I'm sure persons are wondering, like, what are we going to be talking about? But before we get there, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do, so they know they are getting information from someone who is qualified to speak on the topic.
Yes, yes. So I am a psychologist and a family coach, and I work with high achieving professionals, and I help them to break free from a term that I called known as stable misery, where you're not in crisis, but you're unfulfilled, unhappy, and just unclear on how to move things forward with your children, with your partner, or other sacred relationships in your family. So I also work with organizations and help them or because believe it or not, organizations and corporations can be in stable misery too.
I'm
And
coming from an organization, and so I understand that sometimes we don't even realize we're there, but we're going to get there.
absolutely, absolutely. I also, in that same vein, some of the topics I address and talk about are how to tame triggers and how to deal with burnout. Two things that very much emotional regulation and burnout definitely impact how people function.
Thank you for that. Very, very, like, I'm very excited. Anytime Dr. Lynyetta and I get on together, it's like a proper girl chat. Like, we just need to sit on the couch and have something to drink, and we're at it. And we're like, okay, it's time to go.
So true. We really, really got to go. We got to save this. We got to save this stuff. We're going to talk about everything.
All right. So, persons are, you talk about high achievers, and if you're running your own business, naturally you're a high achiever immediately, because you now need to make sure that you're making money, you're serving your clients, like you're doing all the things. And a lot of times for private practice owners, not everybody has a full team that is built out. So when you think about high achievers, what are some of the triggers, what are some of the things that they can look out for to say, you know what, something is off in how I'm performing?
Yes, yes. Well, when we're talking specifically about our relationships, there are three things that high achievers that in our relationships can evaporate. And I especially have a very my husband's a physician, so I work with a lot of physicians, and I have a very soft spot in my heart for physicians, families, and couples, and I especially see it within them. Um, The best way for me to describe it, if it's okay, is to describe sort of the stable miseries, or the business mistress cycle that
Mm-hmm.
people tend to go through. The first phase is they get caught in stable misery. And again, like I said, it's that feeling where you are not in crisis, but you're just unhappy and unfulfilled, right? And there are three things that often keep us stuck in that stable misery cycle, especially as high achieving professionals. The first one is a lack of control, right? And that has to do with a sense of powerlessness. Now, as a high achiever, a lack of control and powerlessness might feel foreign,
Yeah.
right? Because you're a leader and you have power. But when we're caught in stable misery in our family relationships, it can often feel that way, especially with our kids. It's like we struggle to create boundaries or enforce rules. In our marriages, it might be hard to deal with conflict. You might find like we're getting triggered, or we get to a certain point in the conversation and everything just comes crashing down again. So lack of control often shows up. The second thing that maintains stable misery and sends us reeling in the business mistress cycle is a lack of confidence. It's that sense that on some level I'm inadequate or I'm wrong. Again, feels really foreign when you spend decades in your professional life developing your confidence. And then you get home and you try to connect with your kids and they push back or they push you away. And you're like, I don't know how to do this. I can run a company, I can lead organizations, I can run a staff, but I can't get my
Mhm.
kid to say hi to me when I get home. Right. Or I can't understand my partner's needs, or I always feel like I'm doing something wrong in my marriage, right? So that's the second thing that keeps us stuck, that lack of confidence that people might really feel
Yeah.
in that space. And the third C is lack of satisfied craving, right? And what that often looks like and feels like is there's just no joy. There's no joy, there's no validation, satisfaction, fulfillment. And those are things that we absolutely can get from our careers, right? Validation. You do something right, you put a stint in or you heal a bone or something, and you're like, I did it. So good. And the family's loving you and throwing parades in your name. And then you get home and
The
you just
complete
feel
opposite.
disconnected,
And
You're like, where's
when
my parade?
you exactly, like you're an awesome person, you're out there saving lives. And the thing about it is, for persons who are joining and you're wondering, okay, how does this connect to my business? And I'm glad you took it in that direction, because you're achieving all of these things at work, but here it is, you're at home and it's the complete opposite. And one of the things that I shared when Dr. Lynyetta and I connected was I'm a firm believer in creating a vision, whichever way you do it. If you do it with pictures, if you write it down in a book, I believe in that. And you can share your personal experience, your husband, and what journey you went on. But for
Mhm.
me, I realized when I was just giving so much to my personal business as I'm growing as an entrepreneur, it's how am I creating that. I'm using the word balance because a lot of persons use it, but we prefer to use harmony. How am I creating that harmony? And what is that vision for our lives? What are the things that we are wanting to achieve? And then we're adding to that the various elements. We have obligations at church, we have obligations for kids, we have obligation for the business. How does that fit into it? Because whenever you find that there's friction where you're feeling, okay, I'm not in control, or I'm lacking confidence, or I'm not getting the satisfaction, there is some friction, something isn't working together. And then this is no, we no dive into how, because I'm getting that from my business. You know what? Let me go over here. People are liking me on social media. People are following. People are joining my lives. My patients are better. Drift to the area where you're getting it without addressing the other part. And this is now we get into the mistress part of our business. So let's
Yes.
jump
That was
into that.
That was such a good lead in. Because the second phase is the business mistress phase, right? So
Mhm.
you realize I don't feel in control. I feel incompetent. I don't feel satisfied, right? Like that craving that we all have for joy and satisfaction, it's not bad, isn't being met. And so what happens? What do? You turn towards you deeper towards your business because you're in stable misery at home. It's like, oh, I'm going to turn to, and this isn't conscious, turn towards my business and rely heavily on that to get those three seeds met.
Yeah.
Right. So now it's like I feel in control, and it's not just a little distraction or a hit of joy, but it becomes, when in the business mistress phase, it becomes your primary source of emotional support, joy, right? Getting those needs met. And
Something
so,
just came to mind. I hope you don't miss your point. I remember in my corporate days, we would have you have some leaders who are just very hard to work with, let's put it that
mm,
way. And we would run this joke where we'd be like, they have no control at home, so they're trying to control us. Like,
mm,
I didn't even realize it until you were saying that just now. And I'm like, oh my God, we may have been onto something without
yeah.
even knowing, right?
Yes, and if you think about it through that vein, it makes perfect sense, especially when you have some leaders who get really hard on their staff or their employees. It's like, if that's their only place where they get joy and control and feel confident, we can't, like, they can't let it go, right? Like, no, 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 no,
So
no.
it wasn't us. We were not the problem. Uh, I think Dr. Lynyetta is I don't know, she's back yet, but guys, this is some good stuff for you to think about, and that is why sometimes we don't consciously realize what we're doing, because I'm sure as leaders, you were frozen for a moment, but I'm sure as leaders they weren't thinking, you know what, I don't have any control at home, but I'm going to do it. No, maybe it's just that because you're a high achiever, this thing needs to come out, and this is the only place I have.
Yes, yes, absolutely. You have control at work, and if you can't figure out how to do something, or if you can't, then if you don't have it in the moment, you can figure it out, right?
Yeah.
You have more than adequate competence. More than likely, you've been studying this stuff for decades with an S, right? And you get the joy and the validation. Not saying that your job isn't hard. Sure, it's hard, but when that patient looks at you, or that team member looks at you, or that partner looks at you and smiles and is like, we did it, right? It
Yeah.
gives you that hit of dopamine and you're like, I did do it, right? So not only are you right, but you're often praised for being right. And if that, I mean, and that's why I say this isn't about blame, because as human beings, we are wired to move towards things that
Yes.
give us a sense of joy and validation and accomplishment. That's just how we're wired. So, and I will say, my husband and I, we were stuck in stable misery. I'm a psychologist, he's a physician, right? I mean, it's like we were called the power couple, and we felt powerful everywhere but in our marriage and together. When it came to career and kids, we got it. We could talk about that all day long, but when it came to talking about us and our connection, or those difficult topics that are just easier to avoid, we would
Yeah.
avoid it. And then we would just spiral deeper and deeper into stable misery as we relied more and more on our business, which brings us to the third phase of
Hmm.
the business mistress, which is that business frenemy stage, right? Frenemy, it's like they're a friend and an enemy, right? So at this point, your business becomes something that the people that you're around, your people at home, can begin to resent, right? Family members may begin to resent your career or your business. And you start to notice like you're getting into fights about how much you're working and you're never there, right? Or they'll start to complain. Your kids might start to complain like you're always working, or work is more important than us, right? And
Guilty as charged.
go ahead. What'd you say?
No, I was just saying guilty as charged.
Yes, right. I've been there too. This is not a shame thing. It's more of a recognition, right? And resentment flies in the other way too, because then you start to resent your family because they're trying to take you away from your business.
And I want you to stick a pin on that point, right? Because no, as you have a business, I'm sure your business is, well, we're hoping your business is generating money. There's this no conversation that you have, whether with yourself or with your family, like, hey, if I don't work, then who's providing for the family? How do
Yeah.
we balance that conversation?
Yes. And that gets down to the fourth stage, that if we can spiral out of the cycle, because if we don't, what ends up happening, you just go deeper into the stable misery pit, you come down deeper into the mistress, down in the frenemy, right? And then you just keep cycling over and over again. But if you can get, like, spit off that cycle, the last phase that we all hope to get to, and this is what I work with couples and help them get to, is that relationship evolution stage, or the revolution
Yes.
stage, as I like to call it for short. And the definition that I really like for revolution is it's a complete shift in our ways of thinking, being, and doing. Right? So it's a shift in how we think, how we are, and how we do things in our day-to-day life. And really, in order from that stable misery, or the business mistress cycle, we really do have to shift how we do things. And there's a process that I've created, a paths framework that I use with everything that I do to really help people get out of that.
Yeah.
And the first phase is paths is an acronym. So the first page is a P, which is perspective. And it goes exactly to what you were just talking about, Michelle. It's shifting the way that you think and you see your world.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so a lot of times it's our business, our business, our business. Right. And being able to shift and say, like, our business is just a part of our lives. It's not everything.
Yeah, and
Right.
it's not the business and everything if it's into it. It's the other way around. This is your life, and your business is just one limb.
Exactly. It goes back to what we were talking about before about, I finally figured out her name. Her name is Bronnie Ware. She did the 5 regrets of the dying, and one of the regrets was, I wish I'd worked less.
Mm-hmm.
And she was a hospice nurse, and she worked in hospice, and she interviewed people as they were passing on and asked them, what do you regret in life? And one of them was, I wish I'd worked less. Not one of them said, I wish I'd spent more time in that shiny boardroom with all the wood paneling. It was amazing. My kids took so
Laying
much
in the
of my
sofa in
energy.
my office, not going home to my family, that kind of thing, right?
Exactly. Literally nobody said that, right? So it's one of those things where we don't want to realize, like, we wake up tomorrow and our kids are in college or they're often married and we don't know them and they don't know
Yeah.
us. So what you were saying is that first step of create a vision. And I literally ask people to do this, like, put 3 circles or however many circles, depending on the areas of your life that are important to you. So I'm just going to use as an example, work, marriage, kids, let's just say. You might have hobbies and things in there. But let's start with those 3. And then just brainstorm. If you had it all your way, ideally, what would each of those relationships look like? What would they feel like? Right? What would their presence in your world bring up for you, create for you? So in your marriage, you might say, oh my gosh, we'd be so happy. We'd laugh all the time and we'd have joy. And when I say, what does it look like? I mean, I always say, use the window test. So imagine if I were to look in your window and you were living your ideal life, what would I see?
Yeah.
What would
And
I
I
see?
and I love that you come from feeling, because that's another thing, when it's almost similar when I'm asking persons to create what that vision is. I take them to somewhere that they love. I'm like, okay, are we by the beach? Are we drinking coffee? We're drinking tea? What is it that you love to do? Are you flying in the air and you're just looking over and you're like, oh my God, I am now 5 years in my life and I'm there. I've achieved
Yes.
the things. What does it feel like? Because
Mhm.
we're attached to our emotions without even having medical license. I'm very clear on that, right? It's the emotion. What does it bring up for you? And I ask them to write those things down. And then we go back to the tangible thing, because sometimes we tend to automatically go to, I want to make this amount of money, I want to own this. And when you go there, what you end up doing is what we're talking about now, being in stable misery, and just seeing your spouse, maybe, as I was sharing, we're brothers and sisters. Okay, let's wake up to this routine. We're going here, let's pick up the kids, and then the kids leave and you're like, who are you, and why have
Yes,
you
the
been married
roommate
so
syndrome.
long?
Oh.
Right, yeah, we're roommates. So it's
Mhm.
getting the feelings out. And then another thing I wanted to share, when we talk about creating that harmony, and looking at the circles, I encourage my clients to create a plan. So I'm all about planning, right? Because
Mhm.
then when you say to me, okay, Michelle, this is the vision, because I'm starting there with you, whether or not you've done it before, I want to know what your vision is. So when you're
Mhm.
coming to me and saying, okay, we're going to open on Saturdays, I can say, ding, 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 let's go back to the vision. One of your plan was to have more time with your family. When you do that, not saying you can't, will you be hiring somebody to do it? Will it require any of your time? Are you going to hire a CEO to oversee the operations? So when you have a plan, you're then able to design your life to fit into your plan. So you have time for your family and the circles and all the things that you really want to achieve.
100%. And in that same vein, I swear it's we didn't plan this, but you
Yeah.
were just scheduling these transitions perfectly. The A stands for awareness, and it's about shifting our relationship with our emotions and our body sensations, right? So if you're anything like me, the environment that I grew up in, emotions were a liability, right? Like if I started, anger, sadness, like stop crying before I give you something to cry about, or, pick yourself up, let's move on, right? So I like learned that like, oh, difficult emotions are not my friends,
No.
And now when it comes to breaking free from stable misery, I realize that they are actually our greatest ally. Right. So, because you can start to notice when you are entering into stable misery. I tell people all the time stable misery, it's not an on off switch like a light switch, it's more like a dimmer.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so, with even me and my husband, we'll sometimes get in the rigmarole. Like our kids are studying for finals now. So, it's a lot of like, go, 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 do, 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 do. But if we find ourselves there for too long, the way that we recognize it is through our emotions and body sensations. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't feel as connected to you right now. Maybe we should do something together. How about we go out on a date this weekend? Or, right? It's our emotions and body sensations. Those are the first responders
Yeah.
when you're
And
in
listen
that
to
state
our
of misery.
bodies. Listen
Mhm.
to our bodies, or it's never
Yes.
going to lie. Same thing I tell you for your business. Your numbers don't lie, our bodies don't lie when it comes on to
Mm-mm.
our emotions and what's happening for us.
100%.
And
And
most times
asking,
your partner is feeling the very same thing.
yes. Yes, 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 yes. And when you notice that, asking yourself, like, what do I need right now? How can I lean into my family? Right? Or how do I at least not run to my business for that comfort? Because when you start leaning into your emotions and body sensations, you'll start to notice this cycle. You can't unsee it. I'm telling you, now that you know it, stable misery, business mistress, business frenemy, you're not going to be able to unsee it now. And you're going
Yeah.
to start to notice, like, oh, my kid just made a comment about my business and I
Yeah.
want to bring his neck because this is how we make money and this is how we, right? And you're going to be like, oh, that's the thing that I do. Okay. All right. What did she tell me to ask? I told you to ask.
There you
What do
go.
I really
And
need right now?
you
How
know
can I
what?
lean in?
Exactly. And I'm happy you said lean into it. I know that you have seen it, you can't unsee it, because we are being told differently by
Mm,
gurus. And it's work hard, and when you die you sleep. Rich people don't sleep for 8 hours. And by the way, I'm listening to a whole podcast now on sleep, on the importance of sleep. Each
yes.
episode is like 2 hours long, so I'm very dedicated to this, right? two
Well, you have
hours
to
and
send me that link.
so it's so interesting, and it's like 6 episodes, so I'm glued into it. So when you listen to persons, and that is why when you have a plan, you know who fits into that plan.
Mhm.
Who am I really listening to? Or if I'm listening to them, what is it that I'm getting from them? Because now that you've heard this, you're like, okay, all right, if I feel this way, how am I now having this conversation with my partner? Not coming from a place of judgment, but we're in this together and I love you. And I feel like when something is off, I don't know what it is. How can
Yeah.
we fix this? Or I'm leaning into my business. And even know that you've shared this and I'm thinking about my time in corporate, we would just use these terms.
Mm,
Why are they always working? Why are they always in the office? Are they unhappy at home?
yeah.
you know,
It's like
and
this intuitive sense, right? Like,
we would just say these things, just, oh my God, like, is this, are their spouse giving them trouble? Like, we would just really, as employees, get so caught up in these conversations because we are annoyed, because we want to go home
right.
and we don't want to be working all the time. But and I love that you said it, now that you have heard it, And guys, if you have any comments, remember, please drop it in the chat. If we've said something and it resonates with you, sometimes the chat takes a while to come over. If it doesn't, I will definitely go back on the different platforms and respond. But we're just having a conversation around how are you creating harmony with your relationship and your business, and you're not leaning into your business and avoiding your relationship. But I wanted to share that because I'm like, yeah, light bulbs. Know that you've heard it, you can't unsee it, you can't not
You
realize
can't
that.
unsee it. And the other aspect of awareness is being aware of how people in your world respond, whether it's your employees, like you said, whether they're like, oh, dear God, another late night. Seriously? Oh, my goodness. Like, I need you to be happier at home because I want to go home, or it's even your family,
Oh my God, that's so
where
true.
your family, like when you notice your kids commenting on your job again, or your partner saying, oh, you're going to miss another dinner, or right? Like, realizing, that, oh, those comments are important. Yes, they hurt. Yes, they sting. And a lot of times our initial reaction is to get defensive and fight back. But if you could just slow down and
Yeah.
say, like, is there any truth? And after that, once you acknowledge or come to an agreement around the truth, then you can co-create a plan, right, with
Mhm.
your family, right, on how, okay, I'm going to work until 7, and then, let's play a family game, or we're only going to, electronics until 8, and then everybody puts their phones down unless somebody's on call, right, or something like that. But it's really about honoring that desire and that need for you to engage your family and your business, because it's not about disengaging your business or
Yeah.
shutting down. We don't need the business now to become the enemy. That's not what this requires. But in order to gain that integration, that harmony, there needs to be a recognition that it has a place, and that place doesn't take up everything.
Yeah. And the thing, what I've noticed when you just share that point is a lot of times those, when you, for my time, you're employed, you don't say no to your job.
Mm,
Your boss needs you, whatever hour of night this is, whatever deliverable, whatever it takes, you are there. But then
yeah.
when it comes on to the other things, you quickly change a schedule, or you decide, all right, let's do this next year or whenever. But your family is realizing it. I would have my son would say things to me like, does your boss know that your son plays soccer or football? you know and they can be very cheeky, and especially when they're younger, they're very honest. They're sharing
Mhm.
how they feel. Or I remember an employee, a team member I had, she would say her son doesn't like her boss
Oh,
because they're taking away the time. But we're
yes.
thinking, okay, I need to work, but it's, how do you, and I'm listening to you, and I'm just like, organizations need you, because the truth is, we don't realize that this is what is happening. We just believe we're high achievers. We need to work. They set the goal, I achieve the goal, then the goal goes higher and it keeps moving, 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 and I need to work with it. But how do you lean into the people who are talking to you and tell you that, hey, something is off.
I
It's not working.
I love that. And here's the other thing that's so key, and I'm so glad you said that, is it doesn't take a ton, right? Like, I'm not saying, okay, I need you to work 2 hours a day and then give everything else to your family, right? You would be surprised. I was talking to someone recently who was saying that um, her mother used to worked a lot, but she would actually take time, and you had a similar story, I think. She would actually take time on, I think it was Saturday or Sunday mornings, and they would sit and she would drink tea while her mother drank coffee, and they would just sit outside in the mornings and they would just chat about their week and their day. And but her mother was very, very busy. Her mother was
Yeah.
in corporate and all this other stuff. So, but she remembers that,
Yeah.
and so I think it's super important to realize it's not that you have to shut down your business. You just have to be consistent and predictable, and let people in your family know that they have a place too.
Yeah. And having
You
those
know?
conversations is important, because you may have a season where things are going to be very busy, and
Mhm.
maybe for 2 weeks been, guys, but have conversations. And that's why sharing with them, your children, your spouse, they're adults. They understand. as young as the kids may be, they do
Yeah.
understand. And I remember I was sharing with you a friend of mine whose father passed, and he was a lawyer, had his law firm that was maybe an hour away from home, and he was very busy and always there. And one thing she said she always remembered is just back in Jamaica, we have a really nice beach that do very, very good fish and bami. And she said every Saturday morning they would go there. So regardless of whether he missed her dance recitals, didn't come to sports day, yada yada yada, just the fact that she had that to look forward to, it made a huge difference. I remember I read Shonda Rhimes' book about the year of yes, I think that's the name of
Oh,
it,
yeah.
and she spoke about being dressed up for this formal event, and her child was crying to play, and she stopped, and it took 5 minutes. She was there playing with her, and she said after 5 minutes she was gone
She was
because
done.
she was done. Like their attention span is not that long, right? And
Yeah.
they just go. And sometimes
Mhm.
our kids just want that from us. There are times my son is going to bed and he comes and he just pats his pillow. He just wants me to lay down. I lay down with him for 5 minutes and he's out like a light. Then I can
Yeah.
get up if I need to put in additional time. But sometimes your partner just needs you. Your business is not. I'm just agreeing that we're not saying no because we know things will get busy and it requires a lot of your time. Integration is what we're saying is possible. I know that you've heard it, you can't unhear it.
Exactly. That's a tagline. It's so true. And the next one is T for tools. I always say you're always using a tool. The question is not, am I using one? It's, is the tool I'm using helpful or unhelpful? So this is about realizing what tools are you using to feel in control, to feel confident, to quiet that craving for more joy and validation, right? So getting clear on that. It can look differently for different people. You know, like when we say your business, your mistress, like that's going to look different for everyone. But the
Yeah.
first point is to understand what tools do you use to feel in control at home. Sometimes, you know, you might, I know my husband does this. When he gets really frustrated, he'll come in the house. If he had like a tough day at work, he'll come in and he'll start sweeping. He'll just start sweeping. And I'm like, uh-oh, I hear the broom. Something tough happened today. Right. And so that's his way to try to regain a sense of control around things. For me, I'll start planning things. Like I'll just be like, okay, let me plan the next day, week, month, year. Right. Like that's how I do it. So when I get into that mode where I'm pulling out my iPad, drawing everywhere, I'm like, whoa, 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 what's going on?
Yeah.
Right? So realize like what tools are you using? Do you pick up the phone, you know, every 2 seconds? Do you go to the office, right? How are you doing that? And then ask yourself, what tools can I use instead? And
Mhm.
they involve my family? You know, especially if you're trying to break free from this stable misery. It's one of those things where it takes a little bit of time. It took you some time to get in, it's going to take you some time to get out, but being able to re-engage those people that you care about and start with really light things. Start with say, okay, I'm going to spend 5 minutes with my kid tonight. Just five
Mhm.
minutes. I'm just going to lay with them in the bed. I'm not going to say a word. I'm just going to lay and we'll just see what happens. Right. Or one thing that I have, if you go to what is it, stopstablemisery.com, I have a quiz that it's not up yet. My team is finishing putting it together, but there's a quiz that you can take to see where you are stuck in stable misery. But there's also a connection bundle, and in it contains questions that you can ask your partner. You all can kind of play with. And they get more and more vulnerable as you go down, but they're just really, they start out very light, very easy, very fun, so
Yeah.
that you can really reestablish that connection, right? So, really starting to shift the tools that you rely on, right, in order to meet those needs. If you want more joy at home, you got to create that. And aside from running to your business to get that validation and joy, you have to create and start building that scaffold at home with light and easy things that you can do that will increase your sense of power, adequacy, and joy at home. So you want to be there more.
Yeah.
Right.
And one of the things that came to mind when you were sharing that, I'm reminded of what you said about awareness.
Mm.
And in order for you to be aware, you need to create time for awareness. And it doesn't take forever. Um, there are many apps out there that, I mean, I have a breathing app. Sometimes it goes off and I'm like, I can't stop to breathe right now.
Leave me
But there are things,
alone. Breathe later.
And all it's asking for is 1 minute, just 1 minute to just stop, close your eyes, and just inhale. Sometimes it's 6 deep breaths, and that's it. And sometimes when you're able to connect, you're like, okay, I've now given my brain enough oxygen. I'm now a little clear. Okay, let's go back to this. It can be so important for you to be aware of what you're doing. Okay, I know that I didn't plan on doing this. I'm doing it. What is it? Let me check
Mhm.
myself. And you may not realize it the first time, or you may not be able to realize it alone. That's why you need someone like Dr. Lynyetta. But at least you know what, I'm coming to you because something is off. It's like going to the doctor. You don't know what's wrong with you. Just know that I don't have the energy I used to have,
Yeah.
or this thing that normally happens to my body is not happening, or something is happening to my body that I'm not accustomed to. It's the very same thing, but it requires for us to get connected with ourselves, get connected with what we're doing and how we're serving. And
Mhm.
when you are leaning in to your practice, you're leading into your business because yes, I'm building this, and you guys can say whatever you want to say. We need to make money, da da da. Do you also want your family? And how do you have that conversation where it's integrated and there's harmony? Look
Yeah.
at that. We've gone 35 minutes already.
I know, I know. Ah.
Were there any other areas within the stage that you wanted
Yes.
to share?
So H&S very quickly. So H stands for healing, right? And sometimes we turn our business into our mistress because it's an unhelpful habit. Maybe it was modeled for us growing up, but it can lead to some chronic stress habits, right? So if you're resonating with this, asking yourself, where can I let go a little? Right? Where can I make some time for me and those that I care about? Right? Starting to ask those questions and just noticing what pops up. The other thing that so it's dealing with the stress. That's part of healing. The other part of healing is sometimes people stay in the stable misery pit because wounding has happened in the marriage, right? Or there's a disconnection that was created between you and your child, teen, or tween, and you're not really sure how to deal with it, right? It's a safety mechanism. So being able to say, ask the question like, what do I need to revisit? What needs to be revisited, or what needs to be healed in our relationship? Because if those deeper things aren't dealt with or managed, you're not going to want to go back into that because there's no joy there. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
there's like a big grenade waiting for me. I don't think I'm going to stay at work. Everybody, late night, another late night. Oh,
We
and then the
create
last,
work. We create work. That's
yes.
not, oh, it's urgent. It has to be done right now. It's urgent.
Yes, I got it. If I just do this one thing, I'm so bad at that. Oh my gosh. If I just do this one thing, then I just real quick, and real quick turns to an hour and a half. Like I
Yeah.
am so bad at that. And then the S is self-empowerment, like realizing that you have power. You have power. It can feel like the job, like you're leashed to your job and it's just yanking you, everywhere, but that's not necessarily true. So, looking for ways that you can empower yourself to show up in your relationships in a way that aligns with your vision. And like I said, start small, tiny habits, little things, walking in and doing something different. My husband and I talked about that where he would come in the house and he would say, he would start, like, hey, pick that up. What's that over there? What's the homework you got to do? Da, 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 da. And then we came up with a new habit. When he came in, he would not say anything about what needs to be done or what needs to be fixed or anything like that for the first 15 minutes. He would just be, he would ask, how's your day? And even he admitted, like, I actually feel better because literally what was happening, the garage door would open and the kids would go to their room. They would realize, oh God, he's gonna come in with a laundry list of stuff we need to do. So they would go to their rooms and he was like, that's horrible. They run. They're like little cockroaches. They just run for the walls when I walk in the door. Nobody wants that to happen. So realizing like you can shift tiny little things and asking yourself the question of like, how can I move one step closer to the vision that I have for myself as a parent, as a partner today?
And
Okay.
when you
So
say that, I think about being on my laptop where, because it's my work, nobody's going to interrupt when I'm on it. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, how many conversations am I missing out on? Because it's not that they won't want to talk, but mommy's working. I'm not going to interrupt
Mhm.
mommy when she works. Or maybe they interrupt me 2 times and I go, oh my God. And then they see the look on my face and my son will be like, okay, you answered like you're annoyed. I'm like, no, I'm not annoyed. Well, your eyes look like you're annoyed.
You're like, maybe I'm a little annoyed. Ugh. Like I told that story when my son kept coming in my office. He was really little. He's like 15 now, but he was like 5 or 6, and he kept coming in. And I didn't even realize I was doing it. But the last time he came in, he was like, okay, mommy, I won't come back anymore. I don't want to bother you. I know you're busy. And he wasn't saying it to be snarky. He was just like, he was reading my cues. And I was like, oh my goodness, what have I done? And so realizing like, that's why I go back to that awareness piece around not only is it important to get your vision straight, notice, allow your body sensations and your emotions to tell you what's going on and when you're nearing stable misery or using your business as a mistress, but also focusing on what your family is saying and doing and the
Yeah.
feedback that they're giving you, because that's really, really
Yeah.
important. And then heal your stuff, lower your stress, and look for tiny points where you can find power.
And then this is for you based on the goal you have for your families, because not everybody wants this. Some persons, they just want to be able to work and want to be known for what they do. And if that's your thing, that's your thing. But if you're looking to have harmony with your family, then that's a completely different conversation. Because I remember I was listening to a coach, and one of the things she was sharing was, her child would come in the room, and no, she was really encouraging us not to allow our kids to make us feel guilty about working.
Yeah.
And I listened to that conversation. I'm like, maybe your business strategy is what works for me, not the family advice part of it. Because basically, what she was encouraging us to do is to share with our kids what working allows them to have.
Oh.
And the thing about it is not just about the having, it's not about the creation of the things. Because then if I'm always working and I'm always on my laptop and my family isn't able to talk to me, then I'm going to wake up one day and realize that all these things have happened and I have no idea that they did. And it's not because I wasn't physically present, I just wasn't mentally there. And
Yeah.
is this what you want? If that is not what you want, then there's an opportunity for you to make a change and to find out, how can I be aware? How can I create that harmony? What strategies can I put in place? I want this. I don't know what this is, but this sounds good.
Yes,
It's not
yes. And the
just
other,
like your goal for your business. It's not something that you just achieve and then you move on. It's consistent. It's consistent work. That's
yes,
what
and
life
we'll
is.
always be there for you. We'll always be open and ready for you to do whatever. The
Yeah.
other issue that I have with that suggestion is it's putting your children in the position to be responsible for your feelings and your choices. So when I tell my child, okay, these are all the things that you get because mommy works, and my agenda is so stop making me feel guilty about it, or
Yeah.
stop asking me to spend time with you, or stop that, right? Like now I'm putting the responsibility in their lap, which that's not their responsibility. It's not their responsibility to help me be a workaholic or help
Mhm.
me, figure out ways to like put on my earmuffs and not pay attention to the family. That's not their responsibility.
Yeah.
They have needs. And it's okay for them to come to me and say, Mom, I need you to help me get this need for connection met. Mom, I need you to help me get this need for fun met. It's okay for them to ask. Now, I can say, give me a minute.
Yeah.
How about tomorrow? How about like I can do that? That's that co-creation process. But kids are very accommodating. If you tell them, well, these are all the things that work gets us, then what you're basically saying is work takes top priority in this
Yeah.
family.
And that's what
Work
you're
takes top
teaching
priority.
them. That's you're now teaching them to become that when they become an adult, and then the cycle continues, and then we
Yes.
have the breakdown. I'm a huge um believer in the family, and the benefit that brings towards society and all that kind of jazz. That's a whole different day. But whenever I think about what I'm doing, I'm thinking about, okay, I'm raising this young man to become
Mm-hmm.
example in society. Is this the example that I'm setting?
Yeah. Yeah. Like this is so if you look at how you work and how you are, right? How the thinking being doing, right? The revolutionary. If you think about that and then you picture years in the future, like how you're working, how you are with your kids, how you are in your marriage, and then you picture your kids, 20 however many years from now with the exact same lifestyle, the exact same habits.
Hmm.
What feeling comes up in you? Is it, yay, you are living the life, buddy? Or is it, oh God? If it's the latter, guess what? They're probably going to do it because it's what you're modeling,
Yeah.
right? So that's a really good like clue that maybe something needs to shift. You don't have to turn the world in the opposite direction. It just takes
Mhm.
tiny hat. Whenever I work with people, they're always amazed at how the right tiny shift
Right.
can have a huge impact. So I look in and I'm like, oh, you need to shift this and this and this and this and do that, and you're good. And they're like, holy crap, that worked. Right? Because sometimes it can feel overwhelming. Like, oh, great. She basically wants me to be Atlas and have the whole world on my shoulders and walk up a mountain. Like, no,
It's
I
just
would
little
do
things. It's no different when you're doing your plans for your business. And I say to you, listen, you can't do everything at once.
it. Mm.
Let's work on this little piece. Let's work on your scheduling. Let's work on your marketing. Let's work on, harmonizing your people, getting them happy, one thing at a time, seeing the result, developing that habit, and then you move on to something else. But this has been great. We probably need a part two, but tell us how do we get in touch with you?
Yeah. So if you go to stopstablemisery.com, you can download those. The quiz should be there. My team is finishing on it, but it will be there soon, and you'll get that as soon as it arrives. But you also get the couples connection bundle, which has some things that you can do to strategically stop the stable misery in your marriage. So go to stopstablemisery.com, and any email that comes from me from there, that's me. You'll get me. You don't get my assistant. You'll get me. So you can always send me
Not
messages
an AI.
through.
And I'm dropping Dr. Lynetta's link, her LinkedIn, so you can connect with her, so you can go to all the links and get all the stuff. But I really want to thank you. This has been an amazing conversation. And if you are joining, you're watching the replay, please go ahead, share this with just about anybody in any business. Yes, we may target private practice owners, but this is just for everyone. As you would have realized in this conversation, I am thinking about my time in corporate and how we were onto something. We just didn't know it. Yeah, and maybe it is giving your team, because it's the very same thing. You know what, guys? I know I'm asking a lot of you, but for the next few weeks, we're going to have a rough time at work that may
Mm.
require some extra hours, because your team also has a family and they also have commitments, and how you integrate everyone creates that harmony in the working relationship. And one thing I've learned being a leader, when you can tap into the personal stuff for people and you meet them there, you get so much from them. Like they don't
So
even think about working overtime. They don't even think about working on a weekend if it's needed, but you don't want it to be something consistent. And
yeah.
if you have a private practice and you're thinking about the fact that I'm always here, because this is one thing I've seen, you have been taught that you need to be there, and it's different for genders. That's a whole nother, like we've developed like three other topics already, right? It's different based on the genders, because we all play different roles in the home, and sometimes it requires more from one person.
Mhm.
And if you are finding that that is where you are and you're just thinking, you may not know, but you're thinking, I need some help, I want you to go ahead and check out Dr. Lynetta's profile and connect with her. Is there anything else that you want to share as we wrap up?
Just, connect with me on LinkedIn. Feel free to send me messages, questions. And if you think maybe I want to work a little bit deeper or talk about what that would look like, definitely send me a message and we can chat about what that would look like and how that could be.
Thank you. Thank you so much. This has been amazing, as I've been saying, as usual. And I really mean it, because, so many things are unpacked. So thank you for coming on, and thank you for taking the time and sharing your expertise with us. I do hope, or I'm sure persons will find something helpful from it.
Good. So good. Thank you for having me, Michelle. This was so good. We got to do this again.
Yes. And thank you guys for coming on. I'm also going to be dropping my link in the chat. You can go ahead and connect with me if you have a private practice and you're thinking about, I'm not even sure where I am. I just know I need help, or these things are just not working out for me. We're talking about burnt out. We're talking about how can you still grow your practice, have it profitable, while still going after the things that you want in life. And one of those things that we spoke about today was creating that harmony within your family life. So go ahead and schedule your appointment and let's have a conversation. And we come on weekly. So we're looking forward to another topic. And if there's something that you're thinking, I don't know and I need to talk about, I want you to go ahead and drop it, comment, go on our profiles and comment, and we'll definitely see how we can make it work. So here's to you having a productive week, and we're looking forward to talking to you when next we go live.